right, so here we are in another edition of the Karen Readathon. I'm Rebecca, and I'm here with a very special guest. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Lily Flynn.
That's right. Kevin's daughter, Lily, is with me. And Lily, did I or did I not read you in on most of the details of the Karen Read case yesterday?
Yes, I'm going to be really honest. I'm kind of new to the case. I was not listening religiously to your Patreon. I am now.
Yep, you're in.
And your description of it sucked me in very quickly. And one thing you might not know about me is I'm fairly good with names.
You are a genius with names, which is why you're perfect for this episode. And by the way, listeners, if you just heard a top popping a second ago, it was not an irresponsible drinking and driving beer situation. It was, in fact, a ginger beer, just to wet my whistle. Okay.
I know you had like 8 cases of ginger beer delivered yesterday.
I did. It's my favorite soda. All right. So, okay. Lily, since you're a genius with names, I wanted to do this episode with you because I think there are some people out there, your dad included, who are not geniuses with knowing who all people in this case are. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and fill you in on some of the main characters in the Karen Read case. And I'm pretty sure I have the most of the mains here. I may be missing a couple of side people, but I'm just trying to get some of the mains. And then there are a couple of people here who aren't necessarily mains, but who I think are important.
I think the biggest confusing part is some people have the same last name.
Same last name,
same first name because it's Boston.
And everybody is connected.
Yes.
Like in some weird way. Like there are murder boards and family trees out there online that you can look up.
Small town vibes.
Exactly. All right, so let's start with the characters in court because that's the simplest.
Sure.
So on the defense team, Karen Read has 2 main lawyers, David Yannetti, who's her Massachusetts-based lawyer, and Alan Jackson, who's her lawyer from California. And he's sort of the star lawyer that everybody's talking about.
He's defending some very important, well, maybe not important, but very big-named people.
Yeah, big-name people. Harvey Weinstein, Kevin Spacey, an NBA player, a Saudi prince, etc. And he is a freaking outstanding defense lawyer.
Yeah.
For the prosecution, we're mainly seeing this prosecutor named Adam Lally, who I will just say, if I were him, I'd be really angry right now, but he seems to be keeping his cool. And our judge is Beverly Canone. Now, at the beginning of the case, there were some questions as to whether or not Beverly had conflicts. Her brother, I think, represented Brian Albert in a previous legal matter. And there's a question as to whether or not she's like rented her summer house to one of the Alberts. I don't know. She says she hasn't.
As you mentioned before, the most Boston.
It's very, very case. Boston. Right. But anyway, she did not recuse herself. She's overseeing the case. So it's Judge Beverly Canone and these lawyers. Okay. Cops in the case. The main trooper that we've seen in the case, the lead investigator, was Michael Proctor. He got pretty much eviscerated on the stand, but also even before this, there were a lot of questions about his relationships with various members of the Albert family, the McCabe's, who I'll talk about. He's done all kinds of stuff in this investigation. You know, whether or not you believe he meddled with evidence, he 100% did send his friend group, a bunch of disgusting texts about Karen Read.
Oof.
And did assert 16 hours after he took the case on that text thread that like he knew she did it.
I think my first question to you was, about the other police officers, if they were in the same, was the police department that John O'Keefe worked for the ones investigating? And the answer is no, but the state trooper still does have connections and knowledge of these Canton police officers.
John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer.
Excuse me.
No, that's fine. So he was actually a Boston police officer. I'm going to get to him and Karen in a second because I think that obviously they're the main characters in the story. But I just want to get through the court people first and the investigators. So he's the main trooper, and then his boss is Yuri Buchanan. And so these are the 2 main cops. So let's get back now to the central people, obviously. Karen Read. She's the defendant. She's 44 years old before she became the suspect in his case. I think she's 44. She might be 45 now. She worked in finance. At one point, she was an adjunct instructor at Bentley University. She and John briefly dated in their 20s and then reconnected during the pandemic. So they've known each other for a really long time. John O'Keefe was 46. He was a Boston police officer who'd served in many different roles and for other departments prior to that. He worked for the sex offender unit, and he reportedly had switched to an administrative role, reportedly when he became the legal guardian of his niece and nephew.
Right.
And I feel really, this niece and nephew, by the way, the reason he's their guardian is because their parents died.
Right.
So now, like, their new guardian has also died. It's incredibly sad.
It's like the series of unfortunate events, those kids that just get bounced around.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. So now we have our victims, our suspect, the main investigative cops. There was, by the way, one other cop I just want to mention who's sort of fallen off the board.
Yes.
Kenneth Berkowitz was the chief of police in Canton when this case happened. He resigned in 2022. By the way, he's also a bald guy, white bald guy. All the cops, apparently, in this story.
They look very similar.
They all look like...
Go on X, formerly known as Twitter. You can see pictures of them being compared. They look very similar.
Yeah, worst game of Guess Who ever. So he called Brian Higgins, who we'll talk about, after O'Keefe's body was found. And a week after the incident, while driving past the Albert home, which is like on a dead end, I guess, I don't know. While driving past the Albert home, investigators said Kenneth Berkowitz, found a piece of red plastic.
Just by chance.
That's what they say. Okay, so that's just a thing I want to put a pin in. So he's another cop that, we haven't talked about a lot lately, but he was present in the case. Another big character in the case is a blogger named Turtle Boy.
Yes.
Aidan Kearney.
Yes.
Aidan Kearney has his own legal troubles now for harassing witnesses, interfering with the investigation. There's a lot of First Amendment questions there as to whether or not his rights have been violated, also with interference between he and his attorney. But basically, his blog is what elevated the potential cover-up story to the public and made this story well known. And he's continuing to blog, by the way. And he is not a great actor, but he does get some interesting scoops. And I do read his blog, I will admit, because sometimes there are kernels there that then I follow up on and I'm like, oh, there is something there. Like, he's an interesting figure in this case. And there are accusations that the Reed team colluded with him, were feeding him stuff. There's questions about whether or not he's tipping off them. I don't think any of that matters. No. His really important role in this case is that if were it not for him, we probably wouldn't know about it.
Yeah, he really brought attention for her. You know, the only person who benefited was her. Right.
So the night in question, January 28th to January 29th, 2022 is the night in question. A group of friends went to the Waterfall Bar and Grill in downtown Canton. And then after that, went back to Brian Albert's house. Okay? So one of the main characters in the story, and other real people, I'm calling them characters for the sake of this conversation, is Brian Albert. He is one of the homeowners of the house, along with his wife, Nicole Albert. He was at the bar with his wife. He met family and friends there. And then afterward, they invited everyone to their house when the bar closed around midnight. They said they didn't know O'Keefe well. They'd only met him a handful of times, they didn't really know Reed, but everybody was welcome at their house. Now, her defense says that there were early morning phone calls between Brian Albert and Higgins, which suggests something was amiss way before O'Keefe's body was found. Phone calls at 2 a.m.
The time that they were all supposedly in the house.
Or had just left the house. So they say that everybody left their house around 1 a.m. or 1:30 or 2. There's conflicting things between 12:30 and 2. They say everybody's out. But then there were all these phone calls around 2 a.m. Okay? Yeah. So this is all very interesting stuff. All right. So Nicole Albert is Brian's wife. By the way, you've heard the name Jennifer McCabe.
Yes.
They're sisters.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Here's this connection.
Right. So Nicole says that she went to the Waterfall around 7:30 for dinner, and then her husband Brian arrived at 10 p.m., which is when all the heavy drinking start, right? So she didn't know Reed before that night, and she only knew O'Keefe because her niece and his niece were friends or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, her niece and his niece were friends. Yes, Jennifer McCabe's daughter and O'Keefe's niece were friends. Okay. So that's the only connection she says she had with O'Keefe before this night. So she also knew him a little bit. They have 2 kids, Caitlin Albert and Brian Jr. All right. Brian Jr., it was his birthday that night.
Correct.
And he was having a birthday party at the Fairview home that night. They also have a daughter, Caitlin, Caitlin attended school with a firefighter / paramedic named Katie McLaughlin.
Okay.
She's not on my list here, but she's important. She was a witness in the case. She was one of the first responders on the scene.
Oh.
And she was one of the witnesses who said that Karen Read said, "I hit him."
Right.
So she was like an important witness for the prosecution when she testified, but she also has very close ties with the Alberts. Okay. Now let's move on to a different set of Alberts. These are a very important set of Alberts.
Right.
Chris and Julie Albert. Now, what's interesting is that Chris and Julie say they were at the Waterfall Bar. They say they followed Brian and Nicole back to their house, but didn't go in the house.
So just for everyone jumping in, Chris and Brian are brothers.
Chris and Brian are brothers. Okay. No one's jumping in now. This is a podcast.
You're right. Sorry.
That's not how it works. That's okay. That's adorable, though. So if you're just tuning in, this is the Readathon.
So out of those three families, the McCabe's, the Alberts, and the Alberts, they're all connected by in-laws.
They're all connected.
Okay.
Right. So Brian and Chris are brothers, and Nicole and Jennifer are sisters.
Gotcha.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So Chris and Julie told the federal grand jury, and they've told investigators that they did not, it's not clear whether they went inside, but they basically told the grand jury they went home without attending the after party. They said they were at the Waterfall Bar. They followed the other Alberts to their house. And a lot of reporting says it's not clear whether they entered the house. There's questions there. But they told the grand jury they went home from the bar and did not attend the after party. Okay, so they say they were not in the house when anything happened or potentially or whatever. But you know who was in the house? Their son, Colin. So their son, Colin, was not at the bar, but was in the house for Brian Jr.'s party. The defense says he had the motive, means, and opportunity to attack O'Keefe. We don't really know what the defense's full theory on that is yet, so I'm going to put a pin in it. What's important to know is that Colin says he left the party at 12:30. And he has a friend who's not on my list here who she also testified, says she picked him up and brought him around. It was a whole fucking confusing thing. The important thing to know is that he says he left the party at 12:30. He's the one who had to explain away the scabs on his knuckles by falling.
He says he fell on the ice.
Yeah. He also said in court that he had never been in a fight before, but then there's all these videos of him fighting with people. He's just he's a rising junior in college. He's like an interesting, young, sort of hot-headed seeming person. All right. Let's move on to the McCabes.
Yes.
Jennifer McCabe is Brian Albert's sister-in-law, right?
Yes.
And Nicole Albert's sister. McCabe's were out drinking that night at the Waterfall and then did go to the house, okay? Jennifer McCabe is the one with the phone search that the defense says happened at 2:30 a.m.-ish that says, "Has long to die in cold." And that the prosecution says happened after 6:30 in the morning, that was at Karen Read's request that search was made, okay? So Jennifer knew John O'Keefe through her daughter, who was friends with O'Keefe's niece, who lived with him, right? And then later, Jennifer became friends with Karen. So they're friendly.
Okay.
All right? Jennifer McCabe is the one who invited O'Keefe and Karen to the after party. She texted them the address and where to park. And they said they left at like 1-ish. The defense claims that her cell phone suggests she left closer to 2 o'clock in the morning. And that she passed O'Keefe's home on her way home. Who knows? But what's important to also note is that Jennifer was one of the two women in the car with Karen when they were searching around that morning and when they found John's body.
So that also explains the time, well, at least her version of the timeline of the search, how long to die in the cold. That she got out of the car with Karen. Karen asked her to search.
Correct. Carrie Roberts, the other woman in the car with Karen that morning when she looked for the body, is John O'Keefe's longtime friend who also became friendly with Karen. And it's important to know she also picked her up that morning and was driving around with her looking for John when they found the body.
Right.
All right. Another very important character, Brian Higgins. Brian Higgins was both at the waterfall and the house. He's an ATF agent, friends with O'Keefe, friends with all these other people. Most important, though, Karen and Brian were engaging in this like flirty relationship for the last, couple months before John died. He says that she kissed him. He had to read a bunch of embarrassing text messages between the two of them in court. It appears to be true that they had a flirtation going during the sort of end of her and John's relationship. I don't want to say end of because he died, but like it seemed like their relationship was really on the rocks.
Right.
She was flirting with Brian. It was a whole thing. He said she was cute. She said he was cute. The whole blah, blah, blah. So let's just talk about his like stuff that night.
Sure.
Her defense says that Higgins initially told investigators that he didn't talk to anyone after he left the party, but Brian, Albert, and Higgins have phone calls to each other around 2 a.m. Both men says the calls were butt dials. So one of these calls was 22 seconds long, which he asserted was too short to be a conversation, right? Which they asserted was too short to be a conversation. Short. So do you want to just wait 22 seconds and see how long that is?
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, let's just go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Definitely too short to be a conversation.
I definitely think you could get a couple things in there.
For sure. So he also says he ignored a call from the police chief, Kenneth Berkowitz, and later found out about O'Keefe's death from Albert. It's a whole thing about whether or not he found out about it from Berkowitz or Albert. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
All right. Another witness in the case, minor character, but not completely unimportant, is this young woman named Julie Nagel, another Julie.
Right.
She was at the party, Brian's party. She says she was there, called her brother for a ride, like around 12:30-ish. Her brother, Ryan, showed up, was outside the house, and then she changed her mind about leaving and tried to convince her brother to come inside. He said no, so she left with the McCabe's around 1:30 a.m. Okay?
Just a lot of interesting information floating around.
Right. Ryan was a witness who said that when he pulled up to the house, saw a white woman in an SUV outside, and that he didn't see any signs of arguing or anything. But he didn't see anything.
He saw them as in Karen.
He saw Karen sitting in her car,
Gotcha.
Basically waiting alone outside the house is all he saw. So those are sort of the main figures in the case. Chris Albert, by the way.
We talked about Chris.
But let me just tell you a little bit more about Chris. Chris is one of 8. They have 8 siblings in this family, okay? He owns a pizza shop. He's in the select board. He's sort of like a big figure in Canton. Like the Alberts are actually like kind of larger than life figures in Canton, and that's not unimportant. Of course, we have the other brother, Kevin,
yes,
who came up in court. Kevin is a Canton cop. He was revealed during the trial and other times to be friends with Proctor.
Yep.
Proctor's drinking buddy in the cruiser incident that I talked about earlier. And Reed's defense says he also tried to act as an intermediary for his brother, Brian, and Brian Higgins. And after the federal grand jury subpoenas went out, Kevin was trying to do all this crosstalk between people. So, I think they must know that for a reason.
Yeah.
They don't just assert things. I mean, what I've learned about this defense is their assertions usually backed up by something. We should talk briefly, too, about the fact that the cop, Michael Proctor, his wife, Elizabeth, is very good friends with Jennifer McCabe.
Right.
And spoke to Jennifer McCabe before and after her interviews with him. Like their daughter is friends with his niece. And there was a whole thing where, Jennifer McCabe wanted to buy Michael Proctor a thank you gift. And he was like, buy a thank you gift for Elizabeth instead. Like, please don't buy one for me. But still, I'll take the thank you gift. Just buy it for my wife. So that's sort of like the main, people. It's very incestuous. And I know, by the way, people who are listening right now are probably like, what about this person? There's a lot of
There's other people, yeah.
But to me, like the heart of it is
these are the main characters.
The main characters, the most interesting, and questionable characters are the other Alberts, Chris and Julie, whose son, Colin, is at the center of the potential other theory of the case. I'm not 100% sure that, for me, Colin is, as I said, I think if something happened, it might have been something stupid. But if Colin is the one that this core group of people is trying to protect, Chris and Julie have a lot to lose.
Right.
So Chris and Julie, by saying that they didn't go into the house, Chris and Julie, by saying, I don't know anything about these phone calls, Chris and Julie, to me, they are very much ones to watch. It is not impossible that there were adults upstairs and kids downstairs, and adults knew very little about what was going on downstairs. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios. Like we
said, we might, more than one thing could have been happening.
More than one thing could have been happening. Some people in this case might believe that Karen hit him with her car, while other people know something else to be true and are hiding it. I mean, I'm not saying for sure that's what happened, but those are the kinds of things I think about in this case. So I think about who has the most to lose.
Yeah.
If somebody else is guilty. Higgins obviously is a kind of a suspect because of his secret relationship with Karen. Apparently there was something going on between Higgins and I think Brian at the bar, like some play fighting situation that the cops decided that the camera footage of was just like play fighting. So it seemed to be just some sort of like aggression stuff happening, even though all the witnesses, everybody who was there says everything was fine, everything was great. But then they also allude to all this tension between Karen and John.
Yeah.
So they always point to Karen, and any chance they get,
right,
without ever saying like that anything else could have been going on. So anyway, that's the primer on the who's who. It does still need a murder board because even I'm looking at my list here of people that I wrote down and I'm still very confused. It's very confusing.
Well, okay, so we got two Brians, we got two Julies, we got a Julie and a Jennifer, we got four Alberts.
That's right.
We got five Alberts.
Many Alberts, McCabe's, and it doesn't hurt. It doesn't like everybody has very like bland sounding names too.
Yeah,
like there's no like Erica. Everyone's like a Chris or a Julie or a Carrie. You know what I mean? Like no one like there's just no like nothing that isn't just like straight up Irish. So yeah. So here we are.
Not even any names with a Y in them.
Yeah, no, not like you're a teacher, So what are your thoughts about this case? Do you have any thoughts so far?
Well, as I mentioned, I'm kind of new to the case. Before, I had this idea that it was probably an accident and people were panicking. I had known that it was a very common theory that Karen Read was being framed. I knew that some of the suspects were police officers. Listening to your initial interview with the Boston Globe, the Boston Globe podcast, Say More, I think, the idea that this does happen, that people are wrongfully accused, but people are paying attention because she is someone who looks a lot like us.
Absolutely.
In this New England area.
Absolutely. All right. So Lily, thank you so much for joining me for this edition of the Readathon. And I know that you and I are going to be texted about this case.
Oh yes. I'm hooked. I'm in.
Trial watch. Is school over for you?
It is.
Oh, I'm so jealous. I still have to go to work while this thing is going on. And you just get to watch. All right. Well, you'll have to fill me in when the oh shit moments happen and I may have missed them on the live stream.
Yeah, I'll just be cleaning my classroom with the live stream on my...
Sounds good. All right. Let's stay in touch. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Partners in Crime Media.